Howdy. I'm Nancy L.T. Hamilton, and you are in my studio. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I even cleaned it for you. So anyway, today in this video, we are going to be doing the final part of a 3-part series on wire working. Not wire wrapping, wire working. And what we're doing is forming wire into shapes, making it safa. And a little soldering here and there. See video 2 for that. Anyway, we're going to get started. I'm going to get on my apron and I will meet you at the bench. All right, we are going to be making what I'm calling deer antler shape. It has a beveled edge here, and it's really cool to use for chain or, putting 2 elements together like this. This would be a great place to set a gemstone, that kind of thing. I'm sure you'll find many uses for it. So what I'm starting with is 14 gauge round copper wire that is not annealed, and it's 8 centimeters long. And the first thing we need to do is file let's see if I can show you, a bevel on the end, like so. And you want to do that on both ends of the wire, both of the bevels facing the same direction. So this is going to go flip over this way. This is how I hold my finger when I'm filing. I'm using a large mill file for this, and what I'm doing is dragging at about a very sharp angle like that, and I'm dragging down along the file, pushing a little bit to the left on one swipe and a little to the right on the other swipe, and I'm dragging it down the whole face of this long file. And I want to check often to see how my bevel is doing, because there's no sense doing any extra work. God forbid. Okay, so I've got my bevel on here. They're both facing in the same direction. If these are actually pretty good, but if your bevels, you didn't put it exactly in the middle, all you have to do is take 2 pair of pliers, and you just take one end holds like your non-dominant, and the other will twist it in whatever, the top part or the bottom part, in whatever direction you need to go to make it lined up. But this is pretty good, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to give it a little straighten before the next step, which is annealing. So I'm going to go ahead and anneal, and then we'll go on to the next part. All right, now what we want to do is we want to place bevel side up, and we want to center it on our, if it's not quite 8, center it on there. And we'll go ahead and mark your halfway mark. So now, with my bevels facing up, I'm going to take the pliers and put them pretty much above. My mark is so big, I'm just going to go down a little farther, but let's say I had a normal size mark. You'd put your pliers right above them, and then bend the legs up, and then switch sides. Did I switch sides? I swear to God, sometimes just want to slap myself. Give it a good squish, push down like that, and then we're going to switch sides again, and we're going to move to the tip of the pliers because there's more room to push things. Push, go to this side, push, and hopefully, with any luck, you're actually on center, that your legs are both about the same length. This is so a little bit off, but what I can do is give this a little squeeze, and that stretched it. Then we're going to take, if it's not If your legs are way off right now, what you can do is measure from, let's say, the center of your U shape here, and mark them, and you may have to clip off one end and re-bevel it. I'll show you when to re-bevel it. We're not at this point. At this point, just continue to move on. I'm taking my flat nose, and at about 5 millimeters up, we're going to give it a squiz. Hopefully it won't spin in your hand. Like that, okay? Then I'm going to bend my legs out. Try to get your finger in somewhere, because your fingers make really sweet little nice even curves, and you want to try to match so that they look about the same. This one of course doesn't, because that's the way it is. Okay, so you should have something that looks similar to this. Now, if you had leg issues, do your trimming, and this is a good point to come in and re-bevel. Just remember to do it, on the same side as the other one. Okay, moving on. So now you want to mark your pliers at, shall I guess, 15? Looks like 12, 13 millimeters. So go ahead and mark your pliers. I marked them on both sides. All right, so this is similar to the making a perfect circle move, but you can't grab onto the end, and we really don't want to. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a curve from the bevel. At least I was. So I'm squeezing and kind of just sliding down and almost burnishing that little point there. Once I get that, then I'm going to move in. See, it's actually kind of wrapped around the plier at this point. Anywhere where the first place you can grab onto, which is not there, hold on to it and then start to make a turn. So one, twist, release, move the pliers back, make a second twist, and turn. We're not going to do a third on this, okay? We want it to look like this. We want it to be open. And then do the same on the other side with the scrunchy on your bevel. 1 and 2. So you should have a shape that looks somewhat like that. And I think that this arm here is a little straighter than this one. So I'm going to try desperately. I'm going to push these pliers all the way up at the end and kind of push this metal up with my hand while pulling down with my right. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to kneel it. And I want to make sure that this center part here is straight, which it isn't. So I can put the plier here and squeeze down from the top side, trying to bring that point around a little better. It's all about resistance. So there's that. Now you can drop a piece of solder in here. That will keep this from opening up and is not a bad idea at all if you are going to be using it in a chain, because the forces of the chain will pull this open. I had one somewhere that was soldered. Oh, here it is. Never mind. As soon as you give up. See how there's a drop of solder in there, and that holds these legs together so they don't open up. And now at this point, we're going to move on to the last step on these, which is we're just going to, gosh, why is this thing so dang blurry? There we go. We're going to hammer the interior part here. I like to have my circle open to the right. See how I hammered more in here, and then I moved around like that. Sometimes I'll go around the first round, I'll go a little softer, and then I'll go back in a little harder with my blows. So you end up with a piece like this. And then you can also hammer this little tongue. That will help keep it from opening because it's work hardening it further. And usually it needs another squeeze to close. If you're soldering, you want to make sure they're both sides are touching each other somewhere. If you have a little weird spot like this here, you can always run in with a little half round or needle file if you can find one, which you can't because you think you're organized, but you're not. Okay, there we go. So you can come in here with a half round and put the round end in and push to create even areas. Okay, I'm done with this. So anyway, that's the deer head, and next we're going to do Mr. Moose. All right, here's Mr. Moose. You can bevel this edge here if you want. I tend to use this as a linking mechanism. So the bevel actually wouldn't be great because it would be an open spiral, and unless you solder a jump ring on here or something, you really can't link because it'll slide off. All right, it's time to make the moose. The gauge of the wire is going to extremely influence how big the belly is, as well as the length of the wire. So a longer wire with a 14 gauge, let's say, will give you a smaller length than the same amount of material with thinner gauge. This is a 9 centimeter, and I did not finish my ends because this is a demo. So what I'm going to do is has been cut, straightened, and then annealed. Especially with this 14, it's really important. So I'm going to make a perfect circle. 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, like so. Then I'm going to make another perfect circle on the opposite end in the same direction. Oh, dang. 1, 2, 3. So as you can see, these are not lined up, but that's easy. Just tweak them like that. And this one is overlapping, so just squeeze it so it's flush, and you should have something that looks like this. So now you want to find the center on this. I forgot to do it. It's a heck of a lot easier if you do this before you put the curls on. This was 64, I believe, so I was going to mark it 32. Like the blind leading the blind here. I just can't see anything. Okay, hopefully that's the center. And then, of course, the dowel, whatever you use, jump ring, mandrel, wood dowel, pencil, whatever. That will affect how large the belly is on the moose. Hold the mandrel with your dominant hand. It's way more control. And you want to bend this around so that they're facing each other. Now, as you can see here, these are not lined up because the creator is flawed. So what I'm going to do is see how that's in there like that. I'm going to give that a little squeeze and a little more there. Maybe even a little more. Bring that up. So when you overlap them, they should line up. All right, so now you can try and leave the mandrel in at this point. Actually, not at this point. Never mind. All right, now we're going to make the curl that goes off to the left. And I'm going to line my plier tip up right underneath or next to where the circle joins the wire. And I'm going to turn my wrist like that. So I have a shape that looks like that. I'm going to try to repeat the same thing on this side. And that is completely wonky. Look at that one. Easy fix. Just put it in here and squeeze. Okay, so we want to make sure that these look about the same. I think this one can come down a hair. It's just so hard to do everything exact. All right, once we have that, then we can stick this in the belly. And you can squeeze it by hand and then come in with your pliers up at the top like that. Once again, nothing is lined up, but we don't care that much. Now onto the last part, just like with the deer antlers. Gonna hammer. And then you'll want to readjust this, and you'll want to close these down so that nothing can escape. You can actually solder these too if these were finished, which I didn't do. And you can see why you want to finish these. Let's see if I can get some focus here. See how it just unfinished, it doesn't sit right on that edge. So finishing the edges really helps with if you're going to solder. If you're not going to and you don't care, then you're good to go. All right, now I'm going to show you how to make this shape, which I used often as a bail. You can hang chain off the end and then hang a pendant on here. All right, now once you've got your annealed metal, you want these ends finished. You don't want any rough points. And you're going to hammer the end. You want to create this paddle shape on both ends. So I apply more pressure with the hammer at this end and hammer longer, and then start to walk up. Okay, now you need to anneal it again. Oh my goodness, why? Because these ends are now as hard as a rock. So we want these soft so that we can curl them. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is figure out where we're going to make this curl. I'm going to go with the lower. It's the same setup as with the perfect circle. You don't want any hanging out. You want to start going around 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to really take this around. You can go farther like these are. That one's a little farther than this. It's up to you how you handle it. And we're going to do the same on the other side, and I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to put on the same mark. So 1, 2, 3, really around. So kind of get it looped in there like that. Next, we're going to make the curl that goes around, and I'm going to open these up pretty wide. How wide is that, Nancy? What, 9, 8 centimeters? So we're going to do this. Oh, I have to get my hands in there so you can see, huh? All right, and pull it around. So end up with that. Probably could have made those a little smaller. This is gonna, or I should have made this longer. That's the other thing. All right, so once we get to here, then take something like your mallet and push it around like that. And now we're gonna hammer, but we're gonna be careful because these are a different level than the rest of the metal. So I want to hang those over the edge. And then you want to close these up. See how the size of the curl you make at the end makes a difference in the look. It also changes how much area you have in here and how curved it can be. I would make them in varying sizes until you find the shape or look that you want. These would be cool soldered together too. Okay, so that's what are we going to call that? The canoe. I'm going to call this the Octopus, since I seem to be on animals today. Okay, so I cut and straightened my wire. You don't have to kneel yet. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did to the other end. So now this needs to be annealed. You could also do this with this kind of end on it. You could close this up a little bit more. These actually make really nice spirals after annealing them, because right now they're just too hard after hammering. But or you could leave them unfinished. It's up to you. I mean, this is another design option. So I forgot to mention, I cut a 14 centimeter piece, and after hammering it, it's 14.5. Just to let you know that it does grow a little bit. So mark the center on this, and then I'll meet you over at my vise. I've put my jump ring mandrel into my pipe vise, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this with the center line theoretically lined up. I'm also checking, sorry, let me move you down here to make sure that the legs are matching. So I'm going to push this in, and then I'm going to see if I can find a way to show you this better. Kind of pinching it together underneath the mandrel. You can come in with your round nose and squeeze it. So you end up with a shape like that, and hopefully your legs are still matching. These are pretty dang close. Like that. So then I'm going to switch this out. That was a 8 millimeter mandrel, and this is 4.5, I believe. Oh, my vise doesn't go down anymore, so I'm going to have to get a C-clamp. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, actually I could define this a little better here. I'm going to put the bend here on top of the 4.5, and I'm going to bend this down and around like that. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Once again, with any luck. Oh, we're not right at all. This one's bigger, this one's smaller, so I may have to bring in my mallet. My C-clamp just came undone. It's very difficult to clamp a round thing to your desk. Okay, back to trying to get these shapes the same. And whacking it down until, sometimes you have to raise it up a little bit so you give air space under it for the metal to move into. So I'm kind of lifting this while I'm hammering it, and hoping I'm getting close. Oh, not quite. Well, maybe it's time to come in with flat nose. Grab it here, give it a pull down and that's better. Pull down and a squeeze. I'm getting there. So kind of flattening this wall of hair while pulling down. Now my tips are back to facing, and this looks right. This is a difficult one, so do this after you've made a couple of other things first. Now we're going to flip to our little pliers here, and just want to turn this down like this. the top of the, oh, that's not even, oh, Nancy. Oh, Nancy. I gotta fix that a little bit. Squish. Trying to get these somewhat lined up. Okay, so once we once we get that, everybody can go home. So now what we're gonna do is make our what are we gonna do? We're gonna make our curl on the end here, and this is gonna curl downwards. So I'm gonna use a small part of my plier here. And sometimes I rotate my pliers because the pliers are conical, and I don't want my hole to be conical. So some of these with bigger flaps here, you need to flip your pliers back and forth. So there's that one. Let's see. 3. Okay, so there's those. And the last but not least, we're going to take our round nose and put it in here and pull this down. Like that. Now, at this point, this is infinitely adjustable. You can, let's see, I'll show you a couple that I did. So, number one, they can be either way. They can be this way or this way, whatever you want to do. You can keep them up high, you know, bring them back up here like that. You can bring the arms way down like that, or even farther. Curl it all the way in like this. It's totally up to you how you handle that. This can be brought in farther if you want, or it could be brought out. So I'm going to leave that part up to you. Now that you've got this shape, you know, the decision making is all yours. And just like we did with the other pieces, you can go ahead and flatten some of these rounded areas. If you're going to flatten in here, I'd open them up first and then hammer them and then squish them shut, because it'll be too hard to hammer so close to the main one there. So there's the octopus for you. I hope you have fun. This one might make you curse a little bit, but I won't listen. So anyway, it's time to say goodbye. I hope you come back. You made it all the way to the end of the video. I hope you actually bring this into your studio and start creating some of these shapes. And I hope you join me again. So thank you very much. And this is Nancy L.T. Hamilton saying ciao bella.